Well, hello and welcome to this recording of Resilient Leader, Transforming Stress into Strength. I'm your host, Dr. Leonaura Rhodes. So, welcome to Resilient Leader, how to transform stress into strength. And I'm your host for today, Dr. Leonaura Rhodes. Just a quick bit about me so you know who I am and why I'm the one who's doing this presentation today. I began my career 32 years ago, showing my age there in the UK as a physician. I worked as a GP and then a public health doctor, and my last job in the UK was as a developmental pediatrician, so diagnosing autism, ADHD, and learning difficulties. I've also kind of running alongside that. I've been a coach for 20 years now. I've coached more than 5,000 hours of coaching. I was trying to think how many hours I've done. It could be nearer 10,000. I need to sit down and do the maths again soon. So I've done a lot of coaching, and I've coached chief executives, I've coached billionaires, I've coached TV and film producers, I've coached parents, you name it, I've probably coached somebody with that background. So I love being a coach. I think it's a fantastic way to help people. Um, I am also trained as a brain health coach and trainer with the Amen Clinic. I'm pretty obsessed with brain health. I find it really fascinating, and I love bringing brain health into everything I do. I'm also a specialist in neurodiversity, and I worked back in 2019 through to 2021. I worked for Tony Robbins as one of his elite coaches and business results trainers. So that's a bit about me, and I really love what I do. I spend most of my time these days coaching and training. So I'd love to start off by helping you prime your brain. If you are driving, please do not do this. This would be dangerous if you were driving. So if you are in a private space and can join in with this, then please do. There's a bit where I'm going to ask you to stand up and do a tiny little bit of exercise. Don't worry, it's not strenuous. If you are somewhere where it isn't private, please just close your eyes and imagine that you're doing it. So here is brain priming. And the idea being we want to get our brains into a really good state for what is ahead. So sit comfortably in your chair and bring your fingertips of your right hand to the fingertips of your left hand. And start to rub the fingertips together with such intensity that you can feel the ridges on your fingertips. So just feel those ridges on your fingertips. And now just with your pointing finger, your index finger. And now take the fingertips of your left hand and run them down the fingers of your right hand to your palm. And just move them around your palm. Feel the fine lines. Feel the deep lines. Notice the temperature and any sensations. And now bring your palms back together again and rub them together to create some heat and shake those arms out. Wonderful. And now, if you are in a private place and you can speak reasonably loudly and you can look a little bit silly, please do this. If not, close your eyes and imagine. If you're driving, please do not do this. Okay. So standing, and unfortunately I can't stand because I'll just break my whole scene here. So stand up, and I want you to stand in a super person position. So just make sure your shoulders are up and back, your head is nice and straight and upright. And now I want you to put your hands into a punching position. We're going to punch across the midline while we say a mantra. So follow along with me. Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. Yes. Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. Yes. Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. Yes. And now stand back in that super person position and just soak it up. Sit back down, and now your brain is primed and ready to learn. So I hope that was an interesting exercise. I developed this. I when I used to work for Tony Robbins, he has something called priming, which takes about 15 minutes to do, which is a long time. And I was working with children with special needs, with neurodiversity, and I wanted them to be able to quickly prime their brain. So I developed this video, and if you look me up on YouTube, you'll be able to find brain priming video on there. It's designed for kids, but you can use it too, and it's a bit of a longer version of that. And you'll see later kind of why I do this. So I was just checking the chat very quickly. Excellent. Okay, so I you may have been invited to other, free webinars like this before. I have a promise for you. This is going to be packed full of information. I'm not somebody who likes to gatekeep. I have been very blessed to have an incredible career and an incredible background, and I really want to share a lot of very useful information with you today. So that's my promise for you. This is not a end-to-end sales pitch. At the very end, if you want to learn more, I'll tell you a little bit about how I work with businesses. And if you don't, that's absolutely fine. But I really want you to get good value out of today. So what we're going to talk about, what mental resilience is, why it matters, how the brain works under stress. I'm going to teach you a path to become more resilient, and then a 3-step method that you can take away today and start using immediately to be able to manage better those high pressure moments. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a big believer in getting the best out of our very precious time. Your time is your most precious resource. So I'd love to ask you to give me your full attention. Don't get distracted. Take notes and do the exercises. There's a few exercises scattered throughout. I'm a huge fan of experiential learning and actually, thinking about what does this mean for me? I want you to commit to change. If there is something that comes up today and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I really need to change that, please commit to change. And we're going to save questions for the end, if that's okay. If there's an urgent question or if there's something going wrong with the technology, please, I can't see the chat at the minute because there's something funny going on with Zoom. So please come off Zoom and tell me if there's a problem. I need your help with that. So my old boss, Tony Robbins, once said, leadership is not about titles, positions, or flowcharts. It's about one life influencing another. And that really is what leadership is about. It's about having positive influence over other people. And here's the cool thing, leadership starts with you. And it isn't about a title or a position, it's about influence, like I just said. And every single person is a leader. You're leading something in your life, your family, your team, your business, or your organization. And it's very important to know that you must first lead yourself. You must lead your mindset, your habits, your reactions, because this sets the foundation for everything else. You'll have heard the phrase, put your own oxygen mask on first. If you are a mess and you don't have a good mindset and you are chaotic, it is going to be very hard for you to positively lead other people. So always begin with yourself. It's not an egocentric or selfish thing to do. In fact, it's a loving thing to do because when you show up as your best self, you can help other people more. So you're also leading others, maybe at work or at home or in your community, and your influence matters. You also lead through your decisions, especially those decisions that you make under pressure. And your choices that you make every day define your leadership. It's also important to remember that the best way to lead is by example. Whether you realize it or not, people are watching and following, and you are a role model, either a positive one or a negative one, for all those people who are watching you. The question isn't, are you a leader? The question is, how resilient is the leader you're being, especially under stress? So being a leader is hard. It's not an easy thing to do. It's much easier to, take a step back and let other people lead. And leadership can take a toll. It can be a big emotional responsibility. You may feel the pressure to perform, to deliver results consistently. Everybody's watching you and you need to be consistent. Then, of course, there's people problems. It's funny, and when I coach executives, the thing that comes up most often is people problems. Other people are complicated and you're complicated too. And so, those navigating relationships, how do you get the best out of people? How do you, help someone prevent making mistakes, and how do you help them recover when they have? All of those things is one of the things that you know, uh, um, is a heavy load on leaders. And then there's all the uncertainty. You are making decisions, often without complete information, and those decisions matter. And this creates this high stakes situation where you feel that every choice that you make may impact multiple lives. And leadership, like I said, isn't just about tasks, it's about the emotional and cognitive load that compounds daily. Now, there are costs if you are not a good leader. And in the US alone, it's estimated that $323 billion are lost every year due to turnover caused by poor management. And again, when I work with executives, the most common reason they leave is poor management, poor leadership. Um, when when a leader, especially high up, is not leading well, there may be a loss of up to 7%. I actually think it's probably more than that. But the statistics say 7% of annual sales are lost due to poor leadership, which is a lot. And the cost for having a bad leader is up to $126,000 a year. Poor leadership doesn't just affect morale, it can also affect the bottom line. It can devastate financial performance. And productivity losses alone cost the US economy 482 billion annually, while individual poor leaders drain 126,000 per year through turnover, reduced productivity, and team conflict. So it has a big impact. And then there's the cost to culture and engagement and talent drain. It's estimated that 30% of employees are actively engaged. The other 70% are not actively engaged. They're just going through the motions in their job, and poor leadership is the number one cause. Half of employees leave to escape their manager, not to leave the company. And I've worked with many people who, they're on the verge of leaving, and then there is a leadership change and they decide to stay because it wasn't about the company. They often love the company, but a poor leader can just make your life miserable. And then there is a 2x productivity potential. Effective leadership can double worker productivity. And the ripple effects, as you can imagine, are profound. Disengaged employees spread negativity, innovation stalls, and departing talent takes knowledge and future leadership potential with them. And poor leadership damages the brand of your company. It makes it harder to attract top performers, especially today when there's all these kind of online surveys. You can go and see what employees think of a company so easily today. And, if you've got a poor reputation, it's going to be very hard to attract top performers. And risking long-term organizational reputation and growth can be, one of the outcomes. There is a great book, and I say that with hesitation. It's a good book. I didn't love the stories in the book because it's written by two guys who are in the US military. So a lot of the stories are about kind of war situations and things. But the concepts in the book are brilliant and really profound. And I teach them to all of the leaders that I work with. And what they say in this book is that leadership is hard. And it requires a constant balancing of opposing forces. And they also say great leaders don't choose sides, they navigate the middle ground. So, what are these dichotomies? There are several of them. And here's where you want to be heading for: caring deeply about your people, but still making hard decisions for the mission, laying people off if they are not doing a good job, that type of thing. Own everything, especially as a senior leader, but empower others. Don't micromanage or be too hands off. I hear that all the time. People are either, going to one extreme or the other. Be resolute and decisive, but not overbearing and inflexible. Nurture and develop people, but know when to let someone go. Sometimes people are just not a good fit. And a lot of companies, they keep people way too long. Train hard, but also train smart. Push growth without it being overwhelming. And, I think back to when I was a doctor, we were training hard, but it was often not smart. We were not being efficient. You just had to work horrendously long hours, but nobody was working at their best. Be aggressive and proactive, but not reckless. It's funny, I'm doing client interviews at the moment for one of the companies that I coach for. And I've done three so far. And people in the company not being proactive has come up in every single call. So you do need to be not aggressive, but you do need to be proactive. You need to be pushing things forward as a leader. You also need to be disciplined and structured, but not too rigid. You need to hold people accountable, but don't hold their hands. You need to lead confidently, but know when to follow and when to listen. You need to plan thoroughly, but don't overplan. And you need to be humble, but not passive. And be focused on the details, but not detached from the big picture. And, one of the quotes from the book is there is no one size fits all solution. Leaders must adjust on the situation, adjust to the situation and the people involved. So this is all what makes being a leader so hard. You're balancing so many different things. Now, stress pushes us to the extremes, the kind of that pendulum swing. Stress narrows the brain and makes balance harder. And most people under pressure swing too far in one direction. And we all have patterns. People tend to behave in the same way under stress. It's not like one time the pendulum will swing to the left and the next time it will swing to the right. It usually swings in the same direction for an individual. So stress is one of my favorite things to talk about. It's a really, really fascinating process, and it isn't weakness, it's biology. Stress activates the survival circuits in your brain and sends you into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And here's what I tell my clients. Your brain and nervous system is wired almost identically to your ancestors who were cave people. And let's face it, their lives were in much more danger. There were predators around. They didn't have good shelter, and there might be a fire. They might run out of food, and yet our modern brains, that for most of us we are actually pretty safe. We are still getting triggered into these survival circuits. Stress reduces clear thinking. When you are under pressure, your cognitive capacity goes down. It's harder to see the big picture. You become more reactive, and you respond emotionally, and the logical part of your brain is shut down. Interestingly, I used to do neurofeedback therapy, and the prefrontal cortex, the most highly evolved part of your brain that you really need to be active when you are stressed, it shuts down when you're stressed, and stress shrinks your ability to be resilient, depleting your mental resources. And under chronic stress, even great leaders struggle. And it's not a character flaw. It's biologically normal. It's brain wiring. So I mentioned some journal prompts. I'd love you to honestly write down what has stressed and underperformance cost you up until today. And the second question, what has stress, poor leadership, and underperformance cost your business as a whole, if you're in one? Wonderful. And with any of these journal prompts as we go along, feel free to come back. If you find it useful to journal about this stuff, come back and write more, write in more detail after the call if that would be helpful. So, what is mental resilience? What does this term mean? Resilience matters. It's also sometimes called grit because it is the ability to stay grounded, focused, and adaptable under stress. And the really interesting thing is it's one of the strongest predictors of success and fulfillment, far more than IQ, talent, or confidence, or almost any other measure that you can imagine. So, resilience is the number one predictor of success. A quick story about me. This is an AI generated picture. I don't have any pictures of me as a as a doctor with a white coat on. I am that old. So this is a picture of me. When I was a junior doctor, it was tough. Being a doctor is very long hours. It's very high pressure. You have people's lives in your hands. And most of the time, I coped pretty well, considering. I once even broke up a gang fight in the A&E in the emergency room in a hospital in North Manchester. I stood between two gangs brandishing knives at each other and threatened to kill each other. I stood between them, shouted at them, and told them all to sit down and behave themselves. And so, I had times of being incredibly mentally resilient and tough. But I had other times when I didn't cope so well. And I have one story that I call the linen closet. I was I was working in obstetrics and gynecology. I was two-thirds of the way through a weekend shift where I worked from Saturday morning through to Monday morning. I'd had no sleep on Saturday. And basically, the doctor who was above me, I was very junior. The doctor who was above me forced me to do a surgery that was above my pay grade, that I hadn't been trained for and I shouldn't really have been doing. And he threatened to get me fired if I didn't do it. So I did the surgery through tears, and it went really well. It was a quick thing. And afterwards, I just totally broke down, fell apart, and I ran to the gynecology ward, asked one of the nurses who I was good friends with to hide me in the linen closet. And I think I was there for a couple of hours. She brought me a cup of tea and a biscuit because, of course, that's secure to everything in the UK. And I basically sat and sobbed, and I very nearly walked out of the hospital and left medicine altogether. And when I look back on that time, and by the way, it was in the middle of a period of very severe chronic stress. That job was absolutely miserable. When I look back, I feel very sad for my younger self because I didn't know that there were things that you could do about stress. I didn't know that you could become more mentally resilient. I didn't know there were tools out there to help you. So, I muddled along and I got through it somehow. But I really wish I had known back then what I know now. So I wish to impart that information to you today so that you don't have to suffer like I did. So, what is resilience? What does this term mean? It's the capacity to withstand or recover quickly from difficulties, and another word for it is toughness. For examples, one is a palm tree. A palm tree is incredibly resilient. It bends in storms with winds of over 100 miles an hour, and it doesn't break. And it does this because it has deep roots plus a flexible spine. Then there is the crocodile, an animal version of incredible resilience. It's survived mass extinctions. They've been around since before the dinosaurs, and they adapted through climate collapse. Whether you like them or not, they're an incredibly resilient animal species. Then you might have a resilient human body that is strong, that fights infection, that heals well, that withstands extremes of cold, heat, and injury. And then we might have a resilient mind. A human mind, when trained, can recover, reframe, and even grow under pressure. Three of my favorite authors on kind of resilience and why it leads to good outcomes are Angela Duckworth, who wrote a brilliant book called Grit. And her research shows that grit or mental resilience predicts success more than IQ or natural ability. Then there is Martin Seligman, who's written several books on positive psychology and a book on optimism. And his research shows that optimism builds persistence and leads to better outcomes. And his research looked at the difference between people who develop PTSD and people who develop post-traumatic thriving after a very stressful event. Really fascinating research if you want to dive deeper. And then I'm trained as a mental fitness coach with Shazad Sharman, who has written a great body of work and trained a lot of coaches on how to become mentally fit. And he says that most people don't fail because they lack ability. It's because they lack the tools for handling pressure, rejection, or internal doubt. So why are some people, and if I might whisper here, most of us at times, are not mentally resilient? There are some very good reasons for this. I'll zoom through these. The mind is what the brain does, and it is not a perfect machine. The brain is a biological thing, and it is highly complicated. It is very sensitive and liable to damage. And the way your brain is wired today it's been wired that way through thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of influences that have happened to you. The brain works with chemical and electrical signals. So if there's any problems with the chemicals or any problems with the electrics in your brain, it is not going to work well. And like I mentioned about us, as still being wired like cave people, your mind and your brain particularly wants you to survive. It's not really that bothered about whether you thrive unless you train it to be. You have 6,000 thoughts a day, and many, if not most of them, are not true. Your thoughts change your brain chemistry and the function of your brain. And also the reverse happens. Sometimes you have a feeling and then you go and look for thoughts to figure out why you're feeling that way. And sometimes emotions trigger patterns of thinking. And sometimes people get stuck in emotional and thought patterns that do not serve them well. This is something I've worked on my whole adult life. I used to be a very, very negative thinker, and I have to, a bit like going to the gym, I have to work on this every day. It's very easy for me to start to slide back into it because my brain was wired for so many years for negativity. So examples of how resilience can help a leader. If you can stay calm and maintain composure when the stakes are high, you will have better outcomes. If you can think clearly, you can make sound decisions even under pressure. You can recover faster. Sometimes bad things are just going to happen and it is going to be awful. But the quicker that you can bounce back from setbacks, so much the better. And you can also, if you're a resilient leader, you will lead more effectively, especially in times of uncertainty and chaos, and you will step up. Resilience isn't about never feeling stress. That's just not realistic. It's about how quickly you can regulate your emotions and your body and your thoughts and bounce back. And resilience drives performance. Resilience isn't soft, it directly impacts results. And leaders who master resilience have better outcomes for themselves and the team. They handle conflict better, think clearly under pressure, communicate better, and a good leader can reduce stress and prevent burnout in the team and create sustainable high performance. The good news is resilience is a trainable skill. Stress is biological. Like I mentioned, it's not a weakness or a flaw. And balance is the key to essential to effective leadership. But skills of resilience can be learned. They are trainable, and that's it. That really is good news. You're not stuck the way you are, and you can train your brain to work smarter, and not just push harder. And the best leaders don't just work harder. In fact, some of the best leaders I've worked with are a little bit lazy, but they know how to optimize their brain and get things done smartly. So, you're definitely going to want to write this down. In order to become truly resilient, there are few things that you need to master. You need to master your mind, your focus, your emotional control, and your clarity. You need to master stress so that it doesn't hijack your performance. You need to master your energy and your focus so that you can sustain performance without burnout and get things done. You need to master your body and your brain so it's healthy and functioning optimally. You need to access a peak state at will. I was telling somebody about this yesterday and they're like, I don't know what a peak state is. So let me explain really quickly. Your body, brain, nervous system is in a state every moment of every day. Some of these states are peak states when you're doing your best, you're able to focus, your energy is good, everything is going well. And then some states are terrible. Maybe you're stressed, maybe you're shouting, maybe you're angry. So that is a negative state. But most of us are in neutral states most of the time. It's okay, but it isn't great. And so if you can learn to be in a peak state more of the time at will, with the click of a finger, knowing exactly when you need to do it, it's extremely powerful. And you also finally need to create an environment that supports you. An environment includes the people, the building you're in, the room, the equipment, the chair you're sitting on, your desk, all the equipment, your organizational skills, and your daily habits. All of these things will help you become a more resilient leader. So, journal prompts. I'm just aware of the time. We need to be really quick with this. So, I want you to write down just the numbers. How good are you at managing your mind? 0 to 10. 10 is I am absolutely amazing, one of the best people in the world. So give yourself a score for managing your mind, managing your stress, your physical and mental energy, managing your focus, managing the health and vitality of your body, managing your brain, accessing a peak state at will. And how good are you at creating an environment that supports you? So I'll just give you a few seconds to get some answers down there. And there's no right or wrong answers here, so please be honest with yourself. Fantastic. So really quickly, How does the brain handle stress and mental self-sabotage? So stress hijacks your brain. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that you really need under stress, the smart part of your brain, shuts down. The amygdala takes over. That's the fear center in your brain that activates the survival mode. Chemicals flood your body that are not helpful. They're helpful in the very, very short term. Say a tiger starts to chase you, you need cortisol and adrenaline. Say you're going in to give a really important um, presentation, you need a little bit of cortisol and adrenaline. But when it's too much or it's there for too long, it's bad for you and enters your body and keeps you in a highly alert state. And the saboteurs, and by saboteurs, I mean the little voices in your head that say negative things to you. This will never get better. You are not enough. Just give up. Those type of voices, they get louder when you are stressed. And chronic stress, I have a whole 6 week program that I do on this, but stress is really bad for you. Chronic stress is really bad for you. It affects your physical health, your mental health, your ability to think and learn. It affects your performance and affects relationships. Pretty much everything you do, you will not do as well if you're chronically stressed, as opposed to if you were calm and relaxed and clear-headed. And unfortunately, it also leads to a negative feedback loop that spirals downward, where physical symptoms worsen your mental health, which in turn amplifies the stress response, deepening the impact. So if you don't control chronic stress, it can very quickly spiral downwards. So there is a battle going on in your mind, my mind, everybody's minds between two parts of the brain, and they are very distinct. If we were to look at SPECT scans, which look at functioning of the brain, totally different parts of the brain are activated. So the survival brain is fast and reactive and emotional. It is driven by the little voice in your head, which can be judgmental, it can be controlling, it can be avoiding, it can be obsessive. And this voice in your head, these voices are built to protect you, to prevent you from getting eaten by the tiger. But the problem is, it often overreacts to the situation that's going on, especially today. And then we have this other part of your brain that here I'm calling the sage brain. It has lots of different names, but the sage brain is calm, focused, and resilient. It is curious and not critical. It sees setbacks as opportunities, and it can be trained and strengthened. And like I said, they're actually acting like on a seesaw. They cannot both be active at the same time. The saboteurs, those voices in your head, are designed to protect you, but often they show up too often when they're not needed and they stay too long. And one really cool technique is to start to see them as a rude, uninvited visitor. Say to them, that little voice, when you notice it, "Thank you for coming. I don't need you now. You can leave." And give it permission to go away and leave you alone for now. It sounds like a very simple thing, but it works. So, 3 steps to improve mental resilience when something goes wrong. It begins with awareness. You first have to become aware that things are not good. And I developed this scale called the wellbeing scale that goes from -10, intensely negative, through to +10, intensely positive. Most of us don't spend much of our time in the extremes. We spend most of our time around neutral. Many people today are not aware of how they are feeling and don't stop and check in because they are too busy. It's really important. If you want to have any power over your mind, you need to first become aware of what it is doing and where it is on this scale. So here's the 3 steps really quickly. Number 1, notice using the wellbeing scale or another tool where you are. Catch yourself spiraling into stress or into saboteur thoughts and recognize the signs and say to yourself, be really honest, I'm feeling overwhelmed or I'm feeling judged or I'm tense. That self-awareness is the first pattern. And then you have to ask yourself, do I want to carry on thinking and feeling this way? If you do, That's an active choice. If you don't, go to step two. Step two is to take a break, to pause. The best thing that you can do during a pause is taking a mindful break, doing that tactile meditation that we did earlier, doing breathing, doing diaphragmatic breathing, or even doing some jumping jacks or something like that. What this does is it tips the seesaw in the other direction, activating your sage. And you then ask your sage, what is true? Like if you're saying, I am useless, I'm not good at anything, I'm such a failure, what is wrong with me? The sage will say, yes, you did make a mistake. Mistakes are part of life, and you have an opportunity to learn from that mistake and prevent it from happening and become a better version of yourself in the future. So that's actually what's really true once you activate your sage. And then what should I do? Rather than just staying and kind of moaning and complaining, your sage says, okay, well, what can I do right now to improve the situation? So give this a try. I did have an exercise, but we don't really have time to go through that. So here's the truth about resilience. It is a skill that you can train, and it's developed through consistent practice and intentional effort. And I often think I did karate for I got two black stripes on a white belt. That's how long I did karate for. I think the martial arts are brilliant for training both mental and physical resilience. It needs practice, it needs to be daily, it needs to be intentional. Challenge builds strength. You don't get stronger by avoiding challenge. You don't get a bigger biceps by lifting a 3 pound weight every day for the rest of your life. You get a bigger bicep by increasing the challenge. And you get stronger by meeting it with tools and with courage. And by the way, we are not innately born with these tools. We have to go out and find them and build our own toolkit. Another truth about resilience is everyone feels fear. Everyone has negative emotions. But the most successful people feel the fear and the doubt and the overwhelm and the stress and the anger and all the other negative emotions, but they don't stay there for long. They know how to shift quickly. Mental resilience doesn't mean you will never fail. It just means you will get back up, wiser and calmer and more compassionate next time it happens. So I love this quote. Leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. And this is from JFK. So we've talked about what makes a good leader, what mental resilience really is, why it matters, how the brain works under stress, and a 3-step method for high pressure moments. So I hope that has been really useful. I promised at the beginning I'd very quickly go into telling you a bit about what I do at a deeper level. So if you work for a corporation, I do in-house corporate training. If you're in individual, coaching might be a better option. I do lunch and learns, I do full or half-day trainings, and I also do 4 and 6 week programs, and I can customize any of this. I often say to people when they ask me about this, the only thing that please don't ever ask me to talk about is finances. I really, really am not good at that. So I can talk about most things about physical health, mental health, performance, that type of thing. So here's a long list you can all read. So, I often go in and do trainings about stress, peak performance, optimizing health and well-being. One thing I love going in and doing is disc training. It's a way of analyzing behavior styles and then helping people understand how they can communicate and interact with other members of their team better. Talk about sleep, how to lead, self-care, and all sorts of things. So those are the things that I talk about, and I love going in and doing a corporate training. I think to be able to educate and influence, a group of people, it's just a wonderful thing. I love doing it. So next steps. I'd love to have a call with you to uncover what your company needs. And so here's the link and the QR code if you would like to have a call with me. If you book a call today, I will also gift you a one-on-one 45-minute coaching session with me. And I'd recommend if we do that, we do a peak state exercise. It is one of the coolest, fastest things to do that can really transform your life. But we can talk about other things as well, but that's what I'd recommend. If you want to know more about me, I'm sorry, I've messed up this slide. If you want to know more about me, this is my website. I'm going to be doing these taster sessions at least once a month. The next one I have organized is neurodiversity at work, one of my favorite things to talk about, what leaders need to know, but were never taught. Quick piece of statistics, 15 to 20% of people are neurodiverse. That is, they have autism, ADHD, learning difficulties, dyslexia, and most of them are underperforming because the work environment does not suit them. And this QR code on this side is where to find out. I forgot to move it earlier on today. So I'd love you to join me for that. And please, if you've enjoyed this and you know other people who might benefit, please share with them. I really want to spread this work to as many people as I can help. So please join me for that one. So wrapping up, I'd love you just very quickly to write down, and then we're going to open up the chat and open up for questions. I want you to write down what was the most interesting thing you learned or were reminded of today. And what, if anything, will you commit to changing in your life going forward?